Alright, we are recording. There's some rant potential here, so it might end up being long, but we'll see. We'll see. By the way, if you heard that, I was just turning my armrests back to straight. It's more comfortable with the book in my lap if they're angled in. Anyhow. So now we're mostly hanging out with Grievous on the bridge of the ship. We do have some time with Anakin, Palpatine. Obi-Wan is still unconscious, but we do have some time with him, but it's mainly with Grievous. So getting caught up on the battle, which is not well done, in my opinion, for a few reasons. One is more so relevant later on, but it's just the whole... the ARC 170s of Squad 7 had joined the V-Wings of Squad 4 and swarming the remaining Vulture fighters that had screened the immense Trade Federation flagship Invisible Hand. That's the first sentence of this chapter, where, as the previous chapter, we had, the whole Anakin dealing with Dooku and all that. And it's like, we're just suddenly thrown into this. It's like, I would have liked setting the scene a bit, because, the ARC 170s of Squad 7, it's like, the what? Of the what? I don't know what the context is here. It would have been nice if we had the setting given to us first. Also, it annoys me the V-Wings being mentioned, because, I remember those things in Rogue Squadron. They were fun. They were also a bit overpowered. But it's like those were in Rogue Squadron, which actually predates the Phantom Menace, because you could put in codes to unlock various vehicles in that, including a... oh crap, who made the Imperial? It was a car, and it was hilarious. It had cluster missiles, which is also what the V-Wing had, and was terrifically overpowered, because they could also track. So you'd fire one thing, it would split up into 9 or something, and they would go and track enemies. It was awesome. It had that, but it also did have an S-foil system, so it could really speed up. What was the S-foil, though? It was a convertible. It was so hilarious. But anyway, you could actually put a code in, and it would unlock the Naboo Starfighter. So it was before Phantom Menace, because no one knew about that until after the Phantom Menace released. Because remember, this is before you had online connections, such that could be added in later. It's just, it was already in there. People just hadn't found it yet. It was really neat. Anyhow. And yes, I am that old. I remember playing the PC demo a lot. I think we at least rented it for my brother's N64. I don't believe we ever purchased it. He did purchase. In fact, I think he bought the N64 because of Episode 1 Pod Racer. Anyhow. But yeah, so it's just annoying me, the use of V-Wings here. And I think I had already known about that, and they're a completely different craft. So it is basically because if you take Rogue Squadron as canon, which at one point I'm pretty sure you could, then it means that they reused the V-Wing, and it's very different design, very different all that, and decades later. So yeah, it annoys me, but that I get is a me thing, because okay, my familiarity with the movie era Star Wars would be the movies, would be these novelizations I'm going through. Rogue Squadron 1, Rogue Squadron 2, I'm pretty sure Rogue Squadron 3, I think I do have that. I think that might be it. Oh, no. Force Unleashed 1 and 2 as well, those are between there, but it still is that era of the universe. I also have played KOTOR, but that's thousands of years prior. So that's completely different. But I think that's it. Well, also Lego Star Wars, but I'm not sure how much you want to count that. But it's just the whole, that's my level of understanding of the canon when it comes to other books. So how it starts name dropping. Well, it was name dropping in previous chapters, and name dropping here. So it's different Jedi names, different planet names. It's I don't know any of these, and I don't care about any of these. If they're established in the other lore, that doesn't help me. And in my opinion, that makes this bad writing. When I wrote There's Children Many Gifts, which I left that over there. I don't have a reason to grab it. I left it on my shelf. I was actively trying to make sure I wasn't putting anything in there that wasn't explained, that needed to be explained, because it was a sequel to Failure. So I try to be careful to make sure that there are some things that are unexplained. I even mentioned in the previous video the whole the idea that your abilities do activate when your life is in danger. That is set up in failure. There's also Sam, I refer to them as lessons when basically losing consciousness, going into his own mind. That also comes up, but he does actually kind of explain it. It's just a very short explanation. They are very much a thing in failure. But it's like, I give what explanation is needed. I don't go beyond that because that's not part of that story. The explanation is not part of the story. But here, if you're just dropping this stuff in, it's like, you're just confusing me. I don't know what you're talking about here. It's nonsense to me. If it is a reference to something else, explain it then. It doesn't have to be detailed. You don't need to give me another book. But if I need to do homework to read this, that's a problem. Okay. Yeah. So the next thing, so that they're still explaining this, and some of it is neat, but some of it is I don't care. But it does describe this group of ships maintaining a higher orbit to pin Invisible Hand, that's Grievous's flagship, and the ship that Palpatine, all of them are on. A higher orbit to pin Invisible Hand deep in Coruscant's gravity well. Turbo lasers blasted against Invisible Hand's faltering shields, but it was giving as good as it got. It's like, hang on. So let me get this straight. You've got Trade Federation ship here, Republic ship here, and it's firing down. What happens if it misses, or a shot just goes wild? You're hitting Coruscant, which is a singular city for a planet. So there's population everywhere. That's a problem. Especially when you remember, turbo lasers can vaporize a small town. And you're literally shooting a densely populated city planet. Now, I do get the whole, well, technically, the turbo laser fire may dissipate over distance. I get that. But that's never really explained. It's never really set up. It's more of it's reasonable that that's happening, but we have no actual evidence of that. So they are potentially bombarding their own planet, their own capital planet. This is dumb. Like, it does describe later, I don't remember exactly where, that they position a smaller ship in front of the Invisible Hand so it can't just go through and enter hyperspace. Which also it's in the gravity well, so it shouldn't be able to. But it's like, that's what you should be doing, is just positioning these smaller ships. They don't need to be firing on it. It makes sense if it can. But positioning the ships around to cut off its maneuvering, because it doesn't want to run into them. And then keeping your main source of fire, the battleship, like underneath or at a side, so that you can broadside into it without shots going off, going in another direction. Yeah. What's the next note that I got? I think is that one? Yeah. So, I learned something yesterday. Apparently, my science education was a lot better than a lot of other people in the greater area. This will make sense. Because I asked one person I know, well, actually a few, if they remember learning simple machines in elementary school and, what they were taught. And they were like, we weren't taught that. And I'm like, I specifically remember this. I think I may have been in 4th grade. It was 4th or 5th grade. I think 4th, though. I'm pretty sure it was in 4th grade. Where they actually, brought in this demo cart thing that had them there. And, somebody then... It wasn't the regular teacher. It was somebody who was visiting all the schools with this kit, explaining them and talking about them and all that. And the reason why I was asking this, it's actually because of the book I'm currently working on, though I haven't gotten to that part of it yet. It does involve building up technology from base things, so simple machines are part of that. So I wanted to check some, because I realized certain mapping. But when looking up simple machines, just to see if, my thoughts on it make sense, I found references to there being 6 simple machines. It's like, no, there's 3. And I look at the list of 6, and it's like, okay, that is this. Okay, these 2 are the same machine. That's this machine. That is explicitly not a simple machine. And all these were labeled simple machines, but it was describing the screw as a simple machine, and it's not. Well, yes, it is not. For one thing, it is, if you have a machinist screw, so it's just cylinder with the thing wrapped around, that is an inclined plane wrapped around. An inclined plane is just a wedge. Okay, so the wedge is a simple machine. Inclined plane is a variant of that, but it is still just the wedge. You don't count an inclined plane as a separate simple machine, okay? Because the simple machines are the fundamental machines. And that, I think, is part of the problem, is that that's how I was taught. That's what they are. You cannot describe a simple machine in the terms of any other machine. Anything simpler. But at least all mechanical machines, you can describe as these, just expanded out. And like adding them together, so they were all complex machines. So a machine screw is a version of an inclined plane, which itself is a wedge. And by the way, to say that, well, no, it is different, that's then saying that there's 3 different kinds of levers, because there are 3 different classes of lever. Beam, fulcrum here, weight here, force here, so it goes like that. That's one type. If it's fulcrum here, weight here, force there, that's another type. And then if it's weight here, force here, that's another type. That's 3 different types. So that you're now saying that that's 3 different simple machines. And no, it's all the same simple machine. It's all the lever. So wedge and inclined plane would be the same, and you would, generally speaking, say just the wedge. But anyway, so the screw would just be machine screw would be inclined plane. But then for a wood screw, because it actually has a point to it, along with the spiral going up. So spiral going up is still an inclined plane. But the point there is a wedge. So you now have 2 wedges there, and technically also, and I'm not sure what it is, what the actual, the thread, sorry. The thread on the screw may also be itself a wedge. It may be like that, especially for a wood screw, because it's trying to cut in there. So it's like, you actually have 3 different versions of 3 examples of the wedge there. So by definition, it cannot be a simple machine. It is complex. So anyhow, I remember all that from elementary school. I also, it's funny, I have a friend who is literally doing work with bacteriophages, which is awesome science. And I remember being taught about bacteriophages in my 7th grade science class, my 7th grade biology class. And even seeing like these scanning electron microscope images in our textbook. And it's like, and she was like, I actually never heard about these until later. It's like, I never even had a science class until I was in high school. It's like, apparently I was special. And so it does make me really frustrated when I see things like this. Trailing spiral jets of crystallizing gas that gushed from multiple hull ruptures. It's like, why is this gas crystallizing? It's also describing that the invisible hand began to roll. This is not explained, by the way. But the idea that it's just the gas is coming out, and so it's crystallized. It's like, what is this gas? Because here's the thing. Again, it's the physics of this. That's not what would happen. You need pressure as well for a solid to form. Okay, it's not just cold, right? You would also need pressure there to actually force, because otherwise it would just be like, oh, I mean, okay. So you have gas molecules that, because it's a gas, you can actually have them under pressure if they're warm enough, and they'll be near each other. But once it's outside in space, in a vacuum, or near a vacuum, why would they decide, oh, well, I'll just form a bond then and create a solid? It's like, why would it crystallize? That makes no sense. It would fly apart, because there's no reason for it to crystallize unless we're under pressure. But it's not. You're in a vacuum. Water is an exception, water ice, because the ice is actually a lower density, so it can better handle being in such low pressure than water would, or steam may in some cases. But it's like, well, no, even water doesn't necessarily do that. I mean, it may form it, but it would be very, very small particles, because for the most part, the steam, because you're saying it's a gas coming out, would just expand out in all directions. So yeah, it's like, this isn't what would be happening here. Could you please know some physics? I mean, come on! This, to me, but maybe it is. I just got very lucky with getting taught a lot of science when I was in elementary school and middle school. Okay, I'm just thinking, maybe some of this would be middle school science, but still is, I learned it there. And it's like, an adult would have been writing this, an adult that should have gone into high school and at least had some basic science here. And even this, I don't think you could say that, oh no, we wouldn't have learned that. I mean, I also have a textbook over there, by the way, from 1927, that I'm pretty sure at least some of this would be like, yeah, no, that's not how that works. I love that textbook, by the way. It's one of my favorite possessions. And I have read all the way through that, too. Yeah, so I got a problem with that. Also a problem with the whole, as its ships finally failed, Invisible Hand began to roll, whirling like a bullet from a rifled slug throat, which is their term for a gun, trailing spiral jets of crystallizing gas. Why is it rolling? Okay, so I'll use this, actually, because you can clearly see it's, because it's like, well, actually no, because it's so dark. I'm just trying to see what would... Well, I guess actually this, I do use this as a bookmark. So it's, rolling like that, so you can see. It's like, why? I'm not going to accept that it's the crystallizing gas, which it's not crystallizing. I don't want to accept it's the gas because we're talking about a ship that has already been described as a kilometer long. That's really, really big. And it's not actually going to spin easily. That's a lot of inertia to overcome. And even it's like, oh, but it's the inertia. The inertia is there regardless of the friction. And it's also, remember, if the gas is, like here, and actually angled like that, and not just going out, which there's no reason to believe it's not just going out, but let's say it is actually going like that, it's actually not going to have it necessarily spinning like that, or at least not easily, because it's unbalanced. Now, if you had it like that, now it's actually going to have a much easier time because of it being balanced. But like this, it's having to torque the entire thing. It's not going to do that very easily. So that doesn't make sense. It suggests that unable to pound the same point again and again. By the way, we're only on like the second page of this chapter. I've got so many issues with it. Unable to pound the same point again and again. The Republic's ships, turbo lasers, weren't powerful enough to breach the Hand's heavy armor directly. The tracking points became rings that circled the ship. Okay, if you want to say that it's the turbo laser is striking, which actually makes sense, even if it is an actual laser, it still is. Light has momentum to it, so can actually do that and will move it. And you like those demos where it looks like a light bulb, but inside it has balance on there, 4 plates, white, black, white, black, white, black, and it'll get spinning because of the optical pressure. That yes, you could potentially have it spinning from that, especially if it were very powerful. But it's one of those, the ship is spinning, sir. Oh, start aiming lower then as well, so we can keep it stable. Like, you'd want to do that. Or you'd want to make sure that you're not firing up here constantly, firing at the center, so it'll not rotate. But it is also, if that were the case, then the ship isn't just going to be tempted to spin, it's also going to be pushing down. Because you also have that momentum there. So none of this makes sense physically, as far as the physics is concerned. And partly it's because you're not explaining why it is happening. So it's like, okay, well, what are the answers? The gas makes no sense. There's no way there's enough momentum, no way there's enough mass for that to explain the roll. And if it's the turbo lasers, okay, but then it should actually be pushing it down into the planet, which it isn't. At least you're not describing that. But it would also be then, okay, start aiming down so you keep it balanced. Because also, I mean, they should be fighting in outer space, not just around a planet, which, by the way, atmospheres are a lot taller than you may think. So it is possible. The idea that this is a hard vacuum is actually nonsensical. There's actually a fair amount of mass in the solar system that isn't on a planet. It's very low density, but that would not be a hard vacuum then. I mean, I guess it depends on where you want to draw the line for what is a hard vacuum, what isn't. Anyhow. But it still is. They may actually be in the atmosphere of Coruscant. Because the atmosphere goes up really, really far. And it gets so thin. And it also gets wild. Like, there are alternating bands. I really need to stop doing this. But anyway, there are alternating bands of the atmosphere that, yes, many of these are at low pressure, low density. So it's kind of safe in there. But it still is, there's some where it's actually incredibly hot. Where the gas particles moving around are at very high energy, so it's very high temperature. And then you'll have one where it's freezing, then you'll have another one where it's really hot. It's wild. But the atmosphere is really, really cool, and yeah. Let's try to move on. Oh no, sorry, I got a little bit more science for you. So it mentions that because gravity has been an issue on the ship, which how the gravity system works makes no sense. And it's like, I spent time actually trying to figure out how artificial gravity would work in my Catherine verse. I think it's very evident that that effort has not been put in here, because it seems to either be that they have a singular gravity generator, which, okay, that's fine. There's problems with that. I did that artificial gravity video a while ago that goes through how that really would be a bad system, at least especially for something like this, because of the gradient you'd have to be in. But it's also, they describe gravity changing directions. It's like, well, then you can't be using that system, because this artificial gravity generator should only be pulling gravity towards it. So the idea of suddenly a portion of the ship that's like this, so the gravity's normally pulling down, but now suddenly it's like this, so you're going perpendicular to the gravity generator, makes no sense. So it'd have to be then that it would just be like the deck plating that has gravity generators. It's like, okay, let's consider that then. If it's deck plating, then it, again, shouldn't be able... Why would you have it on the wall, then, such that it could ever turn... It makes absolutely no sense. But anyway, it describes that Grievous, he ignored the jolts of impact, which is nonsense, and was unaffected by the swirl of unpredictable gravity as he paced the deck with metal-on-metal clanks. He walked on taloned creations of magnetized duranium, jointed to grab and crush like the feet of a Vertaxian blood eagle. What the hell's a Vertaxian blood eagle? I mean, it's again, you're just throwing this... I mean, at least you've got the blood eagle there, so it's like, okay, so you're talking about an eagle's talons. Okay. But what the hell is a Vertaxian? And there's other moments, like, I mean, that isn't so bad, but there's other moments where it's like, what the hell are you talking about? I don't care. It's more this jargon stuff. But anyway. It's... The jolts are also described as very significant, and it's even if the magnetism would only be holding his feet. So he's still going to be feeling torque, because Grievous is described as fairly tall, and can be very tall if he expands his joints all the way. So he's going to be torqued anyway. I mean, it's like, you know, it's a little shift here can still do that. And it's like, how is he compensating for that? I don't think that it's a, oh, he's just ignoring that. It's like, like if you did this to a human being, because also if his feet are anchored, so he's not able to adjust and to absorb some of the energy with his legs by, you know, like bracing himself suddenly, and also like dipping down to move his center of gravity. If he's not able to do that because they're just locked in, yeah, that potentially would actually do a lot of harm. Like, I could believe if you had somebody locked in place on a real battleship when it's being shot, I could believe that, depending on where they're standing, I could believe that actually could end up breaking their ankles. And yeah, I could absolutely believe that. And also for further reference for something here, battleships have a keel. A lot of Navy ships do. But the reason why battleships have a keel, and have long had keels, like tall ships had keels, which is just, you know, under the ship, thing going down. It's because when you fire the broadside, which for modern battleships, you can turn the guns around, but you fire that, you're actually at risk of tipping the ship over. You could tip it all the way over so it would capsize. Technically, you also would have that concern in space with a spaceship. But it is just, they're firing, if they're dumping momentum onto their enemy ship, they're also being hit by that momentum in the opposite direction. And they're also being hit by their enemy ship. There's momentum. It's like, this ship should... these are not minor jolts, is my point. And him being locked down like that is likely nonsense. Like, this is where, you know, you get the whole very mythical idea of an inertial dampener. Because you need that to counter it, but there's no mention of that here, and you'd kind of think it would be related to the gravity system as well. So I mean, it's like, I'm just getting finicky because and part of it is if it's inertial dampeners, then say you're using inertial dampeners here, that's how he's standing there. Don't just try to make him this super impressive thing, because it's like, if you don't give another explanation here, it's like, well, no, I expect him to actually be needing to brace himself because he's tall and his center of gravity is not at his feet. It's going to be up, if it's like a man, in his torso. So, yeah, anyway. Either way, get the gravity generators calibrated or disable them altogether, he snarled at a blue-scanned image of a cringing Nemoidian engineer. If this continues, you won't live long enough to be killed by the Republic. But, sir, it's really up to the repair droids. And because they are droids, it's useless to threaten them. So I am threatening you, understand? I hated that line. I really did. Because it's like, why does he have to explain his threat? It removes the teeth of the threat. I mean, it's like, I'd be... If I were the engineer, I'd be like, really? You that's your reply? That's your comeback? I mean, actually, no, he doesn't get a chance to reply. But it's still, it mentions that he doesn't get a chance to reply. But it still is like, and it's also, you can't threaten droids. I mean, R2, that you have threatened droids in other cases. C-3PO gets threatened various times. Yeah, he was threatened in Attack of the Clones. Lars, I mean, it was teasing, but Lars was threatening to, like, leave him outside to let the dust storm clean him off. The sandstorm clean him off. And he didn't like that. So, absolutely, you can threaten these droids. What are you talking about? So, yeah, I just... Grievous doesn't make sense in this book. Because he was already described as very subservient to Dooku. And I think he should be acting more Dooku's equal. He should be acting it. That doesn't mean Dooku would treat him as it. But he should be acting more so it. For his position and for his ruthlessness. But he was very subservient. Here, he's trying to be this very dominant and threatening person. But it's like, dude, you just explained your threat. You took the teeth away. So that's immediately taking the teeth away. And if anything, you just shouldn't have even had the but sir, it's really up to the repair droids. No, you not even have that. I mean, just the whole the Nemoidian going, yes sir, I'll do. Or I'll get the droid, I'll get the droids right on it, or whatever. So it can acknowledge the droids there, but it still is It's a bad line. It cheapens the character some. What's the next thing I got? Okay. This was another thing where it's like, I feel like they're not thinking through what the ship design would be, because it's supposed to be a warship, isn't it? All batteries at maximum fire for effect. Blast that Hulk out of space will make a hyperspace jump through its wreckage, which technically is incorrect. I'll come back to that. But the forward towers are already overloading, sir. The senior gunnery officer's voice trembled on the edge of panic. They'll be at critical failure in less than a minute. Burn them out. But, sir, once they're gone... Rest of his objection was lost in the wetly final crunching sound his face made under the impact of an armor-plast fist, so Grievous. Same fist open, seized the collar of the officer's uniform, yanked his corpse out of the chair, ripping the crash webbing free along with it. So Grievous didn't like his answer and decided to kill him. Okay, I'm okay with that. I mean, it's Grievous, that's what he's going to do. Well, an intense Grievous, not the subservient to Dooku Grievous. An expressionless skull-face turned toward the junior gunnery officer. Congratulations on your promotion. Take your post. Yes, sir. The newly promoted senior gunnery officer's hands shook so badly he could barely unbuckle his crash web, and his face had gone deathly pink as he's moving. It's like, this is a warship, but you only have one post for the gunnery officer? The senior gunnery officer? I mean, I'm sorry, but to me, isn't that a... Well, you got two here. They have equal controls. You have a co-pilot there. Because what happens if that guy just died for another reason? You're just in the battle. You're like, oh, gotta do the musical chairs before we can fire again. It's like, this is stupid. You expect casualties in a battle. What the? It's not well designed. It's not well thought out. I mean, and this is something that it does matter. For one thing, I like ship design. That's something that has always interested me, especially with Star Trek more so than Star Wars. But Star Wars is enough just science fantasy that I just like, blah, whatever. Star Trek, though, there does typically seem to be greater effort to have it make sense. Have some coherent logic to it. And I appreciate that. I enjoy it. So I do pay attention to that when I'm designing my own ships for my stories. So this, it's like, it's just saying to me, yeah, I didn't care. I just wrote something that because it sounded neat. It's like, well, make it sound good too. Um, I feel like there was something else. What was it? Oh yeah. The Ford blast that Hulk out of space because they did put a ship in front so it couldn't move forward, and will make a hyperspace jump through its wreckage. But you've already established that it's being kept low enough in the gravity well of the planet that you can't enter hyperspace. And there's been nothing to suggest that it has moved its position such that would be possible. So you're actually contradicting yourself already. And this is like from one page, one more, and then like 2 pages later, you're contradicting your statement. So yeah, it's yeah. There's also the whole well, here's the line. It's an Indomitable was only a shell. This is one of the Republic ship. Most of its crew dead or evacuated, being run remotely by its commander and bridge crew. It swung unsteadily through the invisible hands vector cone of escape routes to block any attempt to run up toward hyperspace jump. So this is also curious because it suggests 2 things. One is that it being there would prevent its movement. So that it would, but also they would have to run up. So it's not even just you could do a jump through the wreckage. No, you destroy it, plow through it, and then do a jump. But it's still like you have to move, and then you're ignoring that entirely. Yeah, and by the way, I also add this, because I know that some people with The Last Jedi, they hate the so-called Holdo maneuver. There are so many problems with that movie. I don't quite understand that one that people have with it, because it's like, in the movies, and it also what is described here, although true, it is inconsistent and contradicts itself a couple pages later, the idea of an acceleration into hyperspace is present in the canon. So the idea of using it as a weapon does make some sense. So it's like, I'm fine with that image there. I don't know why people necessarily complain about that, unless they are just trying to say, no, you just pop out of existence. Like, well, then why do we see them move forward? In the movies and such. I mean, I don't quite understand that. I will say this though, because I had heard that supposedly the reason why that was in the movie was to try to invalidate space battles. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? It does nothing to invalidate. If anything, it just says that, well, yeah, you got to make sure that you have a different tactic as far as placement of ships, so that you don't have multiple in line like that. That's one. The other is don't use such large ships, so it's less likely to strike. Don't use battleships, don't use dreadnoughts, use things more on the scale of cruisers. Yeah. One thing I come back to this. I mean, just my point that reasoning is dumb. You would just adapt, and it's not that hard a thing to adapt to. But there's so many problems with that movie. Never, yeah. There's a reason why I will never touch those novelizations, but I think they do exist. But I am also curious about this, the ship being run remotely by its commander and bridge crew. What remotely are we talking about here? Because there's 2 different possibilities there. One is remotely as in they are off ship controlling it. In which case, then why aren't you doing that with all the ships? Or they mean remotely, like they're on the bridge, but controlling things across the ship just from the bridge. That I hope is the case, and it's funny how that is like something in a lot of science fiction. Like if you watch through Star Trek, you'll see, like, well, at least in the original series, Sulu is at the console and being told fire phasers, and it's like he's hitting the button, but he's actually then that sends the order to an actual like weapons room where somebody is controlling the phasers and is firing it. It's not that Sulu is directly firing it. And it does seem to be something that you see in, like Run Silent, Run Deep, which I have right there, where on the bridge of the submarine, the command is given to fire, and you may still see somebody like push a button to do that. But then you'll actually see in the torpedo room, no, it's telling the person there to actually pull a lever or whatever to fire the torpedo. I mean, it is just like it is a multi-step process there, and it's like, I guess it makes sense in real submarines, but at least of that era, I don't know what it would be for now. And certainly in science fiction, you'd think that they would streamline all that. And like that, yeah, that is also true in Star Trek 3 Search for Spock. You do have Scotty set up so everything could be controlled from the bridge. So it's like, you can do that. So I'm assuming that's what they're referring to here, and not just they're controlling it from off the ship, because then why do you have anyone on these ships? Now we get the "this is General Grievous" thing. Which one thing that I really don't like about it. So it states that he has his collection of 4 lightsabers. He's taken from the dead hands of Jedi he has killed, personally. The 4 he carries with him... Oh wait, he has many, many such trophies. The 4 he carries with them are his particular favorites, so he actually has more than 4. One belonged to the interminable Kerkurik, whom he had bested at Hyperi. Another to... I'm not even going to try that name. Who had fallen at Vandos. The other 2 had been created by, because you build your own lightsabers, Puroth and Nistamala. Nistamal. Okay, Nistamal. Whom Grievous had slaughtered together on the flame grass plains of Tovoskal. So that each would know the other's death as well as their own. These are murders he recalls with so much pleasure that touching these souvenirs with his hands of armor-plast and durasteel brings him joy. Technically something resembling joy, but don't need to get into that. Lots of name-dropping jargon there that I don't care about. And maybe there are like other books that do go through it. That's fine. I'm not reading those books. I don't have those books. So don't do that. I mean, you can give me some more information about these. But I also have this problem of, how did he get the first one? Yeah, how did he get the first one? Because, I mean, it's like, think about Maul. Darth Maul from Phantom Menace. He specifically trained to be able to kill Jedi. He was armed with a lightsaber that can deflect a lightsaber. Lightsabers work against lightsabers. And it was a Force user. Grievous, potentially, has only been attacking Jedi during these 3 years of the Clone War. But the problem there is, if it's only been for those 3 years, how much training would he have had that would explain any of this? And I know in the movie at least, doesn't Obi-Wan manage to cut off his hands with his lightsabers? So it's not like he's immune to lightsabers. So how did he get that first one? Because then he would have a weapon that would actually be able to counter a Jedi, but it's, again, you still have the Jedi of the Force, he doesn't. So you really do actually need to explain this. How he could do that. And not in, oh, we'll just read this at the bottom. No. Here. This is General Grievous. You're giving me a dossier on him, essentially, here. A description dossier. Give that information to me here. Okay? Because if Darth Maul, who trained for decades, was at his prime, was a powerful Force user and had his own lightsaber, would still struggle to best Qui-Gon, who, yes, I know, was saying is greatest in the galaxy. Let's set that shit aside, because I do think it's crap. But struggled against him, and even kind of well, no, he did in fact struggle against Obi-Wan. Yes, he was tired at that point, that is fair, because it'd taken him a while to beat Qui-Gon, and he fought both of them off initially. But Obi-Wan was able to outpace him because he was younger still, but not as powerful as he would be at this point. But still, is like, Maul still struggled against these Jedi, and he had decades of training, the right weapon, and the Force. Grievous would seemingly at most have 3 years, no Force and no lightsaber. Doesn't have the right weapon to fight them, but he's killed so many that he has a selection of them, and he has 4 in particular he likes. What? It doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense. Okay. Just 2 left. And I think I might be able to keep it short, both of them. So, as I mentioned before, we do have Anakin. We do have some moments with Anakin and Palpatine. And I kind of like it, but it is badly done. Well, no, not. My apologies. Not badly done, poorly done. Poorly done. Palpatine, and this is not in the movies, I recall, Palpatine is pushing Anakin to go to the bridge to find Grievous and kill him. And he was trying to tempt him with vanity, that basically, oh, just think of how great and wonderful you'll be. If you do that, you will have ended the war single-handedly. And this does tempt Anakin. But he is able to resist that temptation. In the whole that's not the Jedi way kind of stuff, but also that's not what Obi-Wan would want. Our orders were to rescue you. Yeah, I would like to, sir, but I can make it an order, Anakin. With respect, sir, no, you can't. My orders come from the Jedi Council, and the Council's orders come from the Senate. You have no direct authority. That may change, and perhaps it should, sir, but until it does, we'll do things my way. Let's go. So, I like that Anakin's standing up to him. That's good. All right, I am happy with that. What is poor about this is there is zero mention of his guilt. And there should be from the previous chapter, which would have just been minutes ago for him. His guilt over murdering Dooku, because that really struck him. All right, he is feeling that. And it was also at Palpatine's order. So it should be here, even though he's feeling great, he's feeling so powerful, he feels like he could do it. He is mindful of the fact that no, he shouldn't. That his orders were to rescue Palpatine, not put himself in danger, not to try to end this war. Dooku was in his way, he had to fight him. He did not have to kill him and say, I shouldn't go hunting for trouble, essentially. That's not what I should do. And it should be emphasized by the whole, he's guilty. Kind of like how in Attack the Clones, after he slaughtered the Tuscans, how Padme had to give him a reason to go to Geonosis. That, the whole, well, I'm going, you're supposed to guard me, so I guess you come with me. And how, in the movie, you just get the, I learned not to argue with you kind of line. But in the book, it explains, well, actually, that's when they're already on Geonosis, I think. But in the book, it explains he doesn't want to fight because he's feeling guilty. And this is hours later. Like, it's the next day. Potentially more than a day later. Well, more than that later. And he's feeling so impacted by that still that... And Padme had nothing to do with that. That it's like, I want to follow your lead. I want you to negotiate. I don't want to have to fight. It's like, that's better than this. Where Palpatine is also the one who told him to commit murder. And he's like, he should be standing up to him in general, but should also be standing up to him as far as the whole. Well, he doesn't even be safe, but in his head, because it's a novel, that I just murdered a man. I can't go and murder another. Okay, so that should be in there. The other is the last point I have. I didn't even notice this at first. I'm Lieutenant Commander Loth Nida. So apparently we got Captain Nida in this. But yeah, he's in charge of the integrity. Well, he's its commander. General Grievous, I am Lieutenant Commander Loth Nida of RSS Integrity. At my request, my superiors have consented to offer you the chance to surrender your ship, sir. By the way, one problem here that does bother me a little bit is it is suggesting here that Grievous is also the captain of his ship, which is possible. Don't get me wrong. But it's Grievous's flagship, and he's a general. He's not necessarily the one that would be captaining the ship. Like how this is Lieutenant Commander Nida. Which, actually, well, that would be his rank, but technically if he is in charge of the ship, he would be referred to as captain. But there could be an admiral on his ship. It refers to him talking to his superiors. That could be an admiral on the ship, but he's the captain. Right? So he's in charge of the ship, not the admiral. So, I mean, this is just... It could just be, no, Grievous is also the captain of his ship. That's fine. But that is one of those technical points that I do actually pay attention to, and it annoys me when they get things wrong. Like how in The Next Generation, the Enterprise is referred to as the flagship. It's like, well, it's not. It's only a flagship if you have a flag officer on there. Which there are some episodes where you do have that be the case. You do have admirals on board, but not... Well, I'm just thinking, technically with the episode, I think that's I know it's the episode with the Pegasus ship on there, I love that episode because I love the ship technology, like I mentioned earlier. That admiral, I can't remember the admiral's name, would potentially be like a flag officer, and yes, his flag is on the ship now, even though he's not commanding any others. He's technically just being escorted by by the Enterprise. But it does make some sense. But in other episodes, like Drumhead, the Drumhead, as I recall, that is a woman admiral who's like leading that, but she's like a JG admiral. I'm not sure she'd actually count as a flag officer then. Like that she would have a command flag that she would control multiple ships. So I'm actually not sure about that. If admirals must always be flag officers, I don't know. Anyway, I mean, it is a technicality that I am curious about. But yeah, most of the time though, no, the Enterprise D is not actually a flagship. Same with the Enterprise E. I think that's referred to as flagship. And basically, they're just throwing on the flagship label there as it's our most impressive ship. It's the one we're most proud of. It's like, that's not what a flagship is. Anyhow, every fleet has its own flagship. Because every fleet should be under the command of an admiral. Anyhow. It's like, okay, he's negotiating a ceasefire here for, chance to surrender your ship. Give this careful consideration. Grievous actually wants to take advantage of a ceasefire. Basically, they're having a parlay, so the ceasefire is in effect. And Grievous is taking advantage of this because it'll give a chance for the turbo lasers to cool down, which is a reason that Nita would also be aware of, and potentially his are cooling down as well, and it's which is fine, but I just find it weird where it's like only being talked about for this one ship, for the Invisible Hand, and technically also the Integrity, but it's like this is a battle. Like there's a bunch of ships going on, and the general here is supposedly the flag officer. So him, like talking about a ceasefire, you wouldn't have a ceasefire between two ships here. You wouldn't. And even for a parlay, it would make sense that no, we're not just stopping these two ships firing at each other. We're stopping the entire battle for this temporary truce. But there's no reference to it. We're basically just ignoring that there are any other ships. Like there's the Integrity, there's the Invisible Hand, there's the Indomitable that's blocking the way of the Invisible Hand. Do we have any others mentioned? But it's like we're just completely forgetting that no, this is a heated battle going on. It's like, what are you doing? Oh man, it's just so very annoying because it's. Oh crap! Did I may have just lost my place. Oh no, I didn't. Okay, the bookmark had just slid down. That's but it was still in it. But yeah, it's just like we're forgetting some important things here, and you were right. Well, I guess true. Where the chapter started, which actually, wait, no, that's a good point. That's a good point on its own. Hang on. That had screened the immense Trade Federation flagship Invisible Hand. Yeah. That is actually very interesting. At the beginning of the chapter, when we are getting some catch-up on what's happening with the battle, it's completely ignoring every other ship. They're not mentioned at all. So we've completely forgotten about that there is a larger battle here. I didn't know that. I mean, I knew it was not. I didn't like how it was being written there, but it's like I completely forgot that. Yes, there's actually like supposed to be like dozens upon dozens of ships here. If it were just the Invisible Hand, it's already destroyed. I mean, it's like I don't care. It's like the Republic has multiple ships here. They're all aiming at this thing. It's gone. It's dust. So yeah, this is ridiculous. Yeah, that is actually a major problem. Yeah. Right side of this chapter, and I'll try to wrap it up with this. We'll see how that goes. I have such a gift for ranting, don't I? The chapter didn't make me angry. So the previous chapters were making me angry. This one wasn't making me angry. It was just frustrating. It was annoying. Because there's too many easy criticisms here. Like the whole, what about all the other ships? And I get, you could be like, oh, you're getting too nitpicky with some stuff. Or it's like, oh, you're making these assumptions. Those wrong. This is what should be. That's fine. Where it's like, maybe some of the criticism is wrong. I'm reading it wrong. Or that I'm misremembering something from elsewhere. I reject anyone saying that my criticism is wrong. That, oh, that's a reference to this book. If you just read that, you don't say, no, I absolutely reject that. A book should be complete unto itself. All right? You can explain it in summary. You can do something. If you feel you can't do that, then drop the reference entirely. Okay? That's... I mean, think about it. Those were the 4 lightsabers he prized most. But he had multiple. We're not getting background on any of the others. So, you can just do that. There's nothing wrong with just doing that. So, yeah. That if you say my criticism is wrong there, that I will ignore. But if I'm just missing things, I'm misreading things, that's fair. But we forgot the entire freaking battle. That doesn't make me angry. It makes me laugh. It makes me laugh at this. Because it is poor writing to bad writing. It's somewhere between those. And it's just... I write by flow. I know I'm just stretching this out. I write by flow, which means I basically sit down. Like the book I'm currently working on, I'm running out of time. I'm not going to maybe write any tonight. Because it takes me a while to read a chapter and it takes me a while to record these. I don't necessarily know the next thing I'm going to write. Like, I'll have an idea for it, but it's not like I know what this paragraph would be, and then that one, then that one. No, I actually have to start writing it. And then I'll just flow through it. If I don't like something, I'll rewrite it, but, I don't necessarily know the specific plan until I'm actually writing it. Even with that, I still try to keep this stuff in mind. I'm like, going back to the Children of Many Gifts, I literally have twice in that 10-chapter long sections that are practically single fights, single battles. Okay? The 40s is practically just one battle. And it goes between multiple combatants, mainly one fighting different people. So that section of it that I read yesterday is nearly the end of the battle in the 40s. I have another in the 50s. Okay? The 40s and the 50s are about those respective battles. I could believe that the battles themselves are only like 7 chapters long, but still, I did that and I maintained continuity there. And I was just writing by flow. Then I went back and editing. I would make sure that things lined up, but they did. And yeah, it all tracks together. Now, true, simpler battles than this, but it still is if it's getting that involved, then that's a reason to pay more attention to it. Even if you are writing by flow, it still is okay, I wrote this. Now I need to go back and make sure I'm not missing things. And make sure that it all lines up. And it seems like it's not there. And I'll also just add this. I do all my own editing. Right? I don't have anyone else that works with me on this. This book would have had at least one editor, I would think. Who should have brought up what's going on with the battle. It's like, oh, well, I'm telling you, no, you're telling me about one ship in the battle. Well, technically 4, because 5. Because there's the Invisible Hand, there's like the Integrity, and then there's like the Indomitable and 2 other smaller ships. So like a battleship and 3 cruisers around it. And then the Invisible Hand. So that's... Yeah, you're telling us about those 5. There's all these other ships there. Because they didn't know that... I mean, think about it. Oh, Palpatine... It's mentioned that I didn't read it. Palpatine is on the Invisible Hand. Because Grievous kind of gives away that... I should talk about that a little bit. Grievous gives away that Palpatine is on board. And he's like, oh, he is there. Can you prove that? Can you show that? Or are you just bluffing? And Grievous is like, yes, bring it up. It's like, Dooku isn't answering. Okay, just show it. I don't think you want me to do that. Of course I do. Show it. No, I don't think you want me to. You should really look at this first. It's like, Grievous is such an idiot. Then he comes over and is like, Palpatine is indisposed. It's like, dude, he's... If you want to say that he is, crap, I'm losing the word. But basically that he thinks, well, he acts before he thinks, that's fine. That he is just boom, boom, boom. I'm not gonna, just do it. It's like, well, I can't. There's reasons I can't do it. Well, off with your head, can't. If you want to do that, that's fine. But then, why was he so subordinate to Dooku earlier? See, this is one of those things where it's inconsistent there. But it's like, anyhow, going back to it with the ship, if there was only the one ship, one Trade Federation ship, then obviously Palpatine's on it. So why is that a question now? So there must be multiple. And in that case, why are we not talking about them? Where are they? Let's talk about them. So it's... Yeah. Isn't this fun? Isn't it fun? I'm having fun. I'm just... I hope more of the chapters are going to be like this. Hey, I'm still getting almost an hour out of it. But it's just... I'd rather be laughing at it and annoyed and frustrated than actually getting angry at it. Because I'm serious, some of the previous chapters would make me angry because, like, this is bad. You're damaging characters. And it's just... Yeah. I'll probably have plenty more characters being damaged as we go forward, but it's just... Yeah. Alright, there's the mouse cursor. See you next time.